The luck is that the opposition can't get its act together.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they're all basically in civil war with each other. And the civil war actually has deep roots, which is that every side is in an identity crisis.
So how did Macron blow his popularity so fast, though? Because isn't he just doing what he promised to do on the campaign trail?
Yeah, but that's not why people voted for him. They voted for him because they didn't like the other guys. So in the first round, you had Fillon, who was at the top of the polls in the beginning, and then he had this scandal with his finances and his wife's finances and so on. And then in the second round, he was against Marine Le Pen, who, most French still don't like, even though a large minority do.
So it makes his voter base vulnerable, basically, because they were voting Le Pen out, not voting Macron in. But he's also had some real embarrassing missteps, like the housing subsidies, which was really painful. They've decided now that retracting those was a mistake, but they're still going to do it.
Wasn't there something with makeup, too?
Yeah.
Is that a makeup budget?
Well, that one was sort of a fake scandal. Because
fake news from the French as well. But yeah, and also the fallout that he had with a high-profile military leader as well, who ultimately resigned. So is it that, actually, as well as anything that's impacted his ratings? Just the sense that actually it's been a bit of a rocky start.
Right. I mean, the thing is, with a small base and French people just generally unhappy with their leaders, he basically had no room for error. And he made a couple of unforced errors. Some of them were serious, like with the defense budget. And then he just crashed.
And of course, when you look at what he could bring to the table, it is plans to change France's labor laws, which are pretty onerous. Was he elected in spite of that or because of it?
There's a significant number of people who support those kinds of reforms. It's just not near to a majority. I mean, he does have a base of support. Like he did get genuine support. It's just not the majority.
So you say that Macron has luck because, obviously, in addition to the opposition not being united in any way, he also has a pretty big majority in the French parliament. So let's talk through specific policies. What do you see as likely and or plausible for him to get done?
So labor market reform looks pretty likely. So what came out is, not earth-shattering. There's some good stuff, but it looks like calibrated to pass without too much trouble. There's still going to be some protests and stuff, but it pretty much looks set to pass.
Now, reform is just one of those words that people always throw out. They're like, oh, country, it needs reform, labor market reform.
Right.
I mean, we hear all these stereotypes about the French labor market, and you can't work, and you can't check your email. I don't know what's really true about that.
Right.
How is the French labor market going to look different if and when his reforms pass?
So the biggest problem with the French labor market is it's a two-tier market. So you have highly secure, open-ended jobs contracts where it's really hard to fire people. If you do, they can sue you and you're almost guaranteed to lose because labor disputes go to special courts whose judges are elected by unions. So it's kind of a mess. And because those contracts are so protected, only a minority of people get them, and then the other half have short-term contracts. And it's not just about the contracts themselves. Like, if you have those sorts of contracts, nobody will rent you an apartment, you're not going to be able to borrow money, and so on and so forth. And it's that divide that really breaks the system, and Macron is trying to smooth that over a little bit. He's not getting rid of the divide absolutely. What would be the real good reform would be to just have one type of labor contract with maybe protections that kick in over time. But he does make it slightly easier to fire people.
As Europe knows, and it's a number of countries in Europe, actually reform takes time. And things can deteriorate in the short term while you loosen up things like rigidities in the labour market. Does his low popularity change anything, or will he press on? Because there's always this recognition that in the first 2 years of your administration, you kind of have to do the dirty work, and then hopefully it will improve towards election day. Does anything derail his reform intentions here?
I mean, like, I can't read his mind, and he's like very new in French politics, and all of the political experts have been wrong about him, myself included. So, I mean, anything could happen. I do think that where he's making a big mistake politically is that he's doing structural reform like the labor market at the same time as he's doing fiscal tightening. And I think that's a really bad idea because the French labor market does need to be more flexible. But I think what might happen is if you're doing fiscal tightening at the same time as you're doing that, well, lots of businesses will lay off a lot of people because they do have that weight, but then they're not going to hire the other people. And then people are going to go, what is this?